Where do white people come from? No, really. Where do you actually come from outside of the USA? I'm asking that the same way Black Americans get asked where we come from. And I'm asking it now because of something subtle but important. With the updates people have been previewing for the 2030 census, under white, it just says white, then it lists optional European subgroups. No required origin, no European American at the top, just white. And a lot of white Americans who've been here generationally were genuinely confused by that. Because many of them don't identify as Irish or Italian or German anymore. They identify as American, or as a mixture of several European groups. Some didn't even know what box to check. That moment matters, because if identity can become that fluid over time, then let me ask the question that's always asked of us. Where do white people come from? Depending on who you ask, the answers range from ancient steppe migrations, to biblical lineages, to spiritual counter-myths, to ice civilizations, to giants, to aliens. And yet somehow it always lands on one very comfortable ending: white American. Hold that thought, we'll come back to it. So let's walk the accepted story slowly and in order. If we're talking about the earliest commonly cited roots, scholars usually start with what's called Proto-Indo-European speaking populations. Not a race, not a nation, a reconstructed linguistic group placed around the Pontic-Caspian steppe roughly 6,000 to 8,000 years ago. That timing matters, because by then, Homo sapiens had already existed for about 300,000 years. For most of human history, people across the planet were melanated. Dark skin wasn't regional, it was standard. From those Proto-Indo-European speakers, we later see the steppe pastoralists, most commonly associated with the Yamnaya culture, around 3300 to 2600 BCE. Highly mobile groups, horse domestication, large-scale migrations. Genetic studies show that in many regions, these groups didn't simply blend, they replaced earlier populations. Europe didn't just grow, in places it reset. Then comes the Bell-Beaker phenomenon, beginning around 2800 BCE. Not an ethnicity, not a race. A cultural package that spread across Western and Central Europe. In places like Britain, genetic evidence shows near total replacement of earlier male lineages. So when people picture ancient Europeans, they're often imagining continuity. Now let's talk phenotype. The lighter skin tones associated with modern Europeans are relatively recent adaptations. Key genetic variants like SLC24A5, SLC45A2, and eye color markers tied to OCA2 and HERP2 spread mainly within the last 8,000 to 10,000 years. That's new, extremely new when placed next to the 300,000-year history of our species. And the sunlight explanation gets oversimplified. Yes, UV exposure played a role, but darker skin populations existed across many climates long before Europe developed lighter phenotypes. Indigenous Arctic peoples, for example, historically maintained darker complexions than Europeans, supported by diet and environment. So cold doesn't automatically equal whiteness. Light skin is an adaptation, not an origin. Only later do we see what people recognize as regional European identities: Celtic, Italic, Germanic, Slavic, all layered, all mixed, all time-bound. There is no single moment where Europe becomes white. That label comes after the fact. Now, the term Caucasian. Yes, it was formalized during an era of racial classification and later misused in pseudoscientific hierarchies. But geographically, the Caucasus region sits near where many scholars place early Proto-Indo-European populations, that crossroads between Europe and Western Asia. So while the racial ranking was flawed, the origin zone itself wasn't random. The problem wasn't pointing to a place, it was turning that place into a hierarchy. And once the label stopped serving power, it quietly faded. Alongside this academic story, there have always been other origin stories. Biblical traditions tracing Europeans to Japheth, spiritual counter-narratives like the Jacob story functioning as moral allegory, and online, Hyperborea, ice civilizations, giants, Nephilim, aliens, even ice wall theories tied to ancient maps and polar myths. Whether someone believes those or not, notice the pattern. Europeans are always allowed multiple explanations. Now fast forward, Europeans migrate to the Americas. Different languages, different religions, often not considered white at first. Irish, Italian, Eastern European. Over time, those distinctions collapse. What remains is a new identity, white American. So fluid that by 2030, many don't even know which box fits them anymore. Now compare that to Black Americans. Our people did not arrive as a single condition or a single story. Yes, there was enslavement, but there were also freedmen, free people of color, Afro-Indigenous communities, and people with African, European, and Native ancestry forming families here for centuries. Our lineage is layered. Our origins are plural. Our culture was shaped here. We are not a monolith, and we are not defined by one chapter. Yet on census forms, the label still reads Black or African American, a continent. Meanwhile, people from Africa and the Caribbean can arrive recently and adopt the same label, even speak for Black American culture. So everyone else's identity updates with time and place. Ours is treated as frozen. Which raises a question: if white can exist as a broad category with optional subgroups, if American Indian or Alaska Native is defined by writing in your tribe, then why is there no space to acknowledge that Black Americans are a people formed from African, European, and Indigenous roots right here, over centuries? So when people ask, why does it matter what Black Americans are called? I'll end where it actually belongs. If identity is allowed to evolve for everyone else, then it's long past time to recognize foundational Black Americans.
Yeah. You know what? Hell yeah. Yeah.
Right before Christmas, the white man traced his roots. He traced his roots right before Christmas. He traced his roots back to Asia. Said that they came from the Asians. And then they went on up, and this debunks, this destroys the Diop's two cradle theory, the Charles Finch, and all of them saying that they mutated in the Ice Age. This destroys it. When they went up to the Arctic Circle, damn near in Siberia in the North Pole, and they got a group of people living there to this day. And they're brown-skinned people. They're about your complexion, with dark hair, dark eyes, and they didn't mutate in the ice. And yet I'm supposed to believe that the doggone white boy in Europe, which has summer and winter and is seasonal, gonna mutate in Europe. That just blows it all out. Now let's see, the concept here is it was a theory that they mutated in the Ice Age. But yet they traced, right before Christmas, they traced a group of people that they say that the Native Americans came from, and they traced them up at the Arctic Circle and damn near the North Pole. And they've been there for thousands and thousands of years, and they still ain't white. But yet I'm supposed to believe that a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person come from Europe, which is warm, has seasons. It can get up to damn near 100 degrees in Europe in the summer. And they're supposed to mutate. You see what I'm saying? So my point here is they proved this thing. Didn't they say that those particular ones traveled from the Arctic Circle to Alaska and got trapped for 500 years in the ice? And still yet, and they say these became the Native Americans of this country coming through the Bering Straits. And the Native Americans were Sinetta's color at the turn of the century. See what I'm saying? So that's all bull. You see, they proved it. They went all up there where the ice was, and the people living there have been living there for 1,000 years, and they ain't got no blonde hair and blue eyes. Sure enough. Huh? That means it's got to be a grafting process. A genetic engineering, like the Hemmitt text say, our biggest problem is we learn how to create another race. That's what the Egyptians said in black and white. Our biggest problem is we learn how to create another race. That's in the Hermetica, translated 1935, Walter Scott's book.
And the process of grafting white out of black began. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it took 600 years. The process was a birth control process, a selective breeding process where you married the lighter on to the lighter, and you killed the darker, saved the lighter, marrying the lighter on to the lighter. And after 200 years, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said God revealed to him that there was a brown civilization on our planet. And 200 more years of that same process a yellow civilization was in existence, and 200 years after that, that same process continued for 600 years. And at the end of that time, there was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed creature on our planet that is called the Caucasian. After you were made, you still had the language. It is a Semitic language. It is Arabic. You were speaking that language, but you had it when your father, before you were grafted from black into white, you spoke that language. Arabia was your home. But now you're a new creature, and you go back into Arabia and you start using some of the technology that you were taught by your father, Yaqub. And within 6 months, you had the Holy Land turned upside down. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that they started questioning, when did this problem arise among us, that they were causing us to fight and kill one another by telling lies. You do the same today. Everywhere you go, you start pitting one against the other, telling lies, dividing and conquering. Well, those days are over. Now it's your time to suffer the consequences of your evil, even though there's a chance for you to escape those consequences, because what you did was divinely given to you to do, and you have fulfilled your role. And now the mercy of God is asking you if you would like to be a part of that which he makes new, or do you still want to fight God over your place? If you do, this is your end. Now, when you were in Arabia, after you were made Caucasian, and you started making trouble there, the king rounded up all that we could find and drove you across the desert 2,200 miles into the hills and the cave sides of Europe, where you went absolutely savage. It was 2,000 years that you were in the caves and hillsides of Europe until Moses came to civilize you. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that some of the Caucasians were hidden by the original people in Arabia, and they grew right up under us. And your Bible teaches you that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and took them to be wives, and race mixing began on the Arabian Peninsula. By the time Moses came, there were hundreds of thousands, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, of Caucasians on that Arabian Peninsula. And one among them was a king. Among them, he was called Pharaoh. And he was so smart and so tricky, he was about to trick the king of Arabia. But they caught up with him and his tricks, and they were about to destroy them. But they asked the question, you know, you have to leave here. So the king, Pharaoh, they asked him, where would you like to go? And he said he would like to go to Egypt. It wasn't called Egypt at that time, but that's how the Caucasians got into Egypt. They were sent there. And then the Pharaoh of Egypt enslaved them. And Moses then had two jobs. He had to bring the cavy out of West Asia, Europe as it is now called, and he had to guide the Caucasians that were in Egypt out of Egypt. They were just a couple of 100,000, a few 100,000. And they were not the seed of Abraham, mind you. These were those who would present a sign, that is all, of a great enslavement that would take place near the end of the time of the rule of the Caucasians. The children of Israel would suffer in bondage 400 years, not those that were exiled to what was now called Egypt. No, these were Caucasian people, tricky people, people that began to create trouble wherever they went. Now look at the Middle East now. In Palestine, the original Palestinian is black. The original Arabian is black. The original Iraqi is black. The original people of that whole area are black. But in the nature of the being made, saving the lighter, killing the darker, this is the process that goes on in our world today. We favor the lighter-skinned black man who is mixed with you, and you push the darker brother or sister down. Where are the black Palestinians? They're pushed out. Where are the black Arabians? They're pushed out. Where are the real black Egyptians? They're pushed out. So this race mixing produced a lighter hue, and some maintained their whiteness, but the same nature.
Welcome to Rich Planet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Today I am going to be talking about the work of Nigel Kerner. Now, Nigel authored his first book in 1997 entitled The Song of the Greys. He wrote another book in 2010 entitled Grey Aliens and the Harvesting of Souls. Now, to discuss these books, I'm joined today by two of Nigel's researchers, Danielle Silverman. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you.
And Professor John Biggerstaff. Welcome, John.
Hello, Richard. Given this scenario and what Nigel hypothesizes is that really in the same way that I mess with organisms on plates, that these guys were messing with us as a species, really looking for advantageous genetics. They only care about whether they can mess with our genes more efficiently. And it turns out that the molecule melanin, actually, you know, when we mess with genetics and stuff, one of the ways in which we can do it is to use things like ultraviolet light to actually splice the genes in the cells and actually alter the genetics, or to get things to, you know, things we put in to actually take, so that we can almost microsurgically implant them in the cells. The thing is, if these cells have got a lot of melanin in them, it's a dark pigment, it tends to absorb that light and diffract it and turn it into vibrations, etc. And then the light just doesn't get where it's really supposed to go. And faster if deliberately put in there.
Right.
But there is a special, do you want to explain the special about melanin and how it protects the cell, the DNA inside the nucleus? That's very important.
Part of the reason you can't do these experiments, you know, where there's a lot of melanin around, the melanin actually in a lot of people, in black people, it's actually spread out through the skin. It spreads out through the cells and covers everything from the actions of the ultraviolet light.
There's no doubt in people with higher melanin, natural higher melanin, that it's far more likely that that melanin will be coating the nucleus, the cell wall of the nucleus of the DNA. Now, the point about that is that ultraviolet light, which is often used to splice DNA, is blocked by that melanin. It absorbs it. It doesn't allow it in to interfere with the DNA. And it could well be, and this is Nigel's thesis, that this was a blocker for them when they were trying to genetically alter the species. And therefore, when maybe just out of random mutation something like an albino came along, they discovered, wow, we can get straight in.
Right.
And it may well be that the paler skinned nation, people on the earth, maybe have that pale skin because of this genetic experimentation to make things easier for them to work on human DNA. And in fact, Professor Steve Jones argues that this thing about vitamin D being, pale skin being there to allow vitamin D to be absorbed and so on, all these theories about why pale skin happened in the first place, he believes it's not an adequate explanation. There is no real explanation or justification for the need for pale skin at all.
Yeah, because I think if
dark skin is always an advantage in every circumstance.
Right, because most people would just automatically assume, well, they went to live in the north where there's less sun,
yes,
so therefore their skin changed colour. But that's not the case.
According to Professor Steve Jones, an eminent professor of biology, that is absolute nonsense.
Right. Okay.
There's just no reason at all for pale skin.
You would want to absorb more light, and you know, I mean, why did we lose hair if we came to a colder climate, etc.
Yeah.
So obviously, something's wrong with that idea.
Right. All right. And Nigel contends that the white races, the northern European races, have probably had the most interference from this outside entity called the grey alien.
Yeah, and he doesn't say that. It's very important to say he doesn't say that from the point of view of a kind of reverse racism.
Right.
It's just he's letting us know that, right, that's there, you may need to do something about it,
right,
and maybe suggesting ways that we could do something about it. And if you look at the record of the European nations throughout history, in terms of colonialism, imperialism, and what they've the havoc they've wreaked on the world,
that point,
it makes the point
that
really.
It's the blue-eyed white races that have got their finger on the nuclear. Well, I mean, what about China? Because he mentions the Chinese as well, doesn't he? He says that they've had significant intervention. Am I right there?
That's right. Yes, there's been interception all across the board. They found ways of doing it, but the most efficient way to do it is on cell nucleuses that aren't protected by the melanin shield.
Okay. Right.
That's just the most efficient, easiest way to do it.
So I'm out sunbathing in the garden yesterday, and I forgot to take my face mask off. I'm really not happy, guys.
In the garden yesterday, couldn't find my own glasses, so I thought I'd wear these.
Trying to strike a chord and it's probably A minor. They not like us, they not like us, they not like us. They not like us, they not like us, they not like us.
Mate, I look like that fucking ice cream, that Neapolitan shit. Chocolate, strawberry, vanilla.
Nothing beats a jet to holiday.
My whole life, I've always had issues with light, especially like the sun reflecting off stuff. And I found out recently that yes, blue eyes are definitely sensitive to the sun, but apparently gray eyes are even more sensitive. And like when when I'm at work, the sun reflects off the cars and into the window, and I will literally go like this when somebody walks in the door and I have to say hi, welcome to Sport Clips. I'll look up and I'll go like this, and like everybody just thinks I'm being so dramatic and they kind of laugh at me. And I'll look out the window like, what are they talking about? It's not that bad. And I'm over here like, I have to look at the floor and say, I'm so sorry, but like now I'm seeing spots. And I've never understood how people could just go outside and enjoy being in nature unless they're like under shade the whole time. So yeah, apparently gray eyes are like one of the most sensitive and the most prone to eye cancers. makes me laugh when people pull out biological arguments for white supremacy when our genes are recessive. Like, if I were to have children with any person with any amount of melanin, brown, black skin, it doesn't matter. My genes are recessive. Same with my eye color. My green eyes, even as far back on both sides of my family, they have brown eyes for white people. I just happen to be some sort of glitch, and my dad happened to be a glitch. And it's so funny to me because it's like, why are you gonna sit here and say, oh, our genes are so much better? I can't even go in the fucking sun. My skin turns bright pink, bright red every time I go outside. Can my eyes take any sort of sunlight at all? Like, I need sunglasses 24/7. So when I wear my glasses outside, it's actually a problem because I have to choose between wearing contacts and my eyes being uncomfortable, or wearing sunglasses to protect my eyes. So no, it is not an inherently supremacist or superior traits that we have. If we're gonna go that route, we are going to lose, because if anything, it's the genes that can withstand the sun and the heat, and that those genes will get passed on in subsequent generations, which there's no guarantee that mine will. I think we are all human beings, we are all equal. But if you're gonna pull out the supremacist superior argument, it's not white skin. It is not white skin. Just pull out a Punnett square, babe.
What they told us is 6,000 years ago, everybody with blue eyes has a single common ancestor. And I feel like I know what the story is. Keep watching this video. Just watch what I'm about to show you. What I'm about to show you, just try to watch it with an open mind. It's just a book I'm writing or something. Don't take it very seriously, but just think about it, digest it. Think about it with your intuition. Sleep on it, ponder it. What do you think?
Sacred mountain, how did you forget her face? She gave you breath, she gave you bones, she gave you love, then you called her unknown. Adam, child of the hidden mother, how did you forget your home?
So here on Earth, the people should be predominantly black or various shades of brown skin. And that makes perfect sense, because if you look at Homo erectus, the beings that were on Earth at the time the Anunnaki first arrived here, the species that were used to create us, they were a dark-skinned global species. They existed basically everywhere on the planet, and they were all dark-skinned. There were no white-skinned Homo erectus, even in the coldest regions of Earth at that time. So white skin is not native to our planet. I guess basically what I'm trying to say here is that white-skinned people like myself should not exist on this planet. There, I said it. It's all out in the open now. And if you are a white person watching this, you're undoubtedly a little ticked off right now, and I don't blame you. I was when I first stumbled on this information. But please hang around and allow me to explain and present my evidence on how I reached this conclusion.
What percent of the world's population is white?
63. 42.
51.
70.
40.
30 or 20?
70.
80.
24%.
72. 20, 30?
43.
24.
20. 30.
80%.
0.
What if I told you it was 7%?
7%? Only 7?
7%.
Only 7%?
Yeah.
No
The
way.
whole world.
Your white people are like top of the world.
7%.
7? What?
7 to 8% is what?
Hang on.
That's not true. It's true.
No, it's not.
It's below 10%.
Nah, that's bull.
Yeah.
Wait.
It's 7.
Shit. And I'm about to be a teacher. Don't learn from me, brother.
You're taking the piss, bro. No, it's a real... It's below 10%. Some estimates put it 7 to 8%.
What's this TikTok? I'll share.
Ozpill.
Yeah, Ozpill. Yeah.
Wait, post me, yeah?
Yeah, you'll see.
So the question was, out of the entire world's population, what percentage is white? There are people who said 60, 80. Somebody even said 90. Do you know what the real answer is? It's 7%. 7%. That means they don't even have the numbers to keep up white supremacy. What that means is either we're letting them keep it up or we're actively helping them keep it up because they don't have the manpower to do it by themselves. What if we all collectively said, I don't want to be in a place or support the ideas of white supremacy? It would be over. There's too many of us versus them. It would be over. This is such a game changer for me. This is like the moment where I heard the word colonizer. Or even when I saw how they treated Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. 7%? They're only there because we keep them there. That's crazy!
You ever wonder why less than 15% of the world's population feels the need to control 100% of the narrative? Because when you're a genetic outlier, born from a recessive mutation with a ticking clock on your DNA, you have to lie to survive. Let's get into it. Modern Europeans carry between 2 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's confirmed by peer-reviewed journals like Nature, Science Advances, and Cell. The Neanderthals were not some mystical master race. They were cold-adapted hominins who lived in caves, scavenged for food, and operated in small, isolated groups. They weren't the future. They were a failed branch of the human tree. And those Neanderthal traits still show up in their descendants. Lower sociability, higher aggression, light skin and light eyes, red or straight hair, high pain tolerance, shorter limb ratios, and a disconnection from nature's rhythms. They weren't creators. They weren't builders. They were survivors of harsh, sun-starved environments until they weren't. They died out. Not because they were killed off, but because their own epigenetic behavior, their limited fertility, isolationist tendencies, and lack of social cohesion couldn't sustain their species. Their extinction is a warning, not a blueprint. So how did they live on? Through interbreeding with Homo sapiens. And that's where modern Europeans come in. The Neanderthal ghost genome lives inside them today. And ironically, that same genetic signature they carry is the very thing they now weaponize to claim superiority. But here's where it gets deeper. Even some East Africans, like Ethiopians, show slightly elevated Neanderthal DNA. Not because they interbred directly with Neanderthals, but because of Eurasian backflow. Invaders from the north came back down into Africa, carrying their DNA, trauma, and mutations with them. And even then, their percentage is far lower than what you see in white Europeans. Sub-Saharan Africans, Indigenous Americans, and Melanesians, their levels of Neanderthal DNA are negligible to non-existent because the most melanated peoples of Earth didn't need to survive the ice by digging holes. They were already thriving in cosmic alignment with Earth, Sun, and Spirit. And speaking of alignment, let's talk skin. The light skin mutation in modern humans is recent, very recent. Studies from University College London show that the SLC24A5 and SLC45A2 gene variants responsible for pale skin didn't even exist until about 6,000 years ago. Before that, even in Europe, the original populations had dark skin, dark eyes, and curly hair. In fact, Cheddar Man, a 10,000-year-old skeleton found in England, had very dark skin and blue eyes. Let that sink in. Whiteness did not exist when the first civilizations were rising, which means the founders of Hemmitt, not white. The builders of Sumer, not white. The mound builders of Cahokia, not white. The creators of the Indus Valley, China's Shang dynasty, Olmecs, Inca, and Maya, not white. So when people ask, what did white people build? The answer is simple. They didn't build. They inherited. And when they realized that their numbers were small and their genes recessive, they panicked. Enter eugenics. Let's name names. Francis Galton, the father of eugenics, cousin to Darwin. Charles Davenport, eugenicist who pushed racial hygiene policies in the US. Harry Laughlin, architect of sterilization laws. Ernst Rudin, Nazi eugenics leader supported by American funding. The Rockefeller Foundation and Carnegie Institution, they funded the research, the labs, the policies. They all pushed the lie that white was not only right, but endangered. So they legislated it, sterilized non-white women, separated babies from their parents, and drew bloodlines to try and purify the impure. Why? Because they saw what was coming. You can't keep a mutation alive when the earth is healing. when the sun returns to its cycle, when people of color reconnect with their power, when rhythm, not reason, guides the future. And now they're saying everyone has melanin. Cute. But next time, let's break that down. Because not all melanin is created equal. There's a reason they study eumelanin, neuromelanin, and pheomelanin separately. There's a reason they mine melanin from fetal tissue in animals. There's a reason they patent it, and there's a reason why, despite all their technology, they can't synthesize the real thing. So no, this isn't just science, it's spiritual warfare through biology. And day 7, we're gonna talk about why they fear the sun and what it means for the end of their timeline.
Point, but let me make one correction. My theory does not say that whites are inferior to blacks. I don't say that. I say that whites feel that they are inferior because they cannot produce skin pigmentation and because their status as, I say, a variant of albinism is genetic recessive to blacks, and they can be genetically annihilated by non-white people. That this is what causes that sense of inadequacy, that they have built a total behavioral system that is a compensation. White supremacy is a compensation for a sense of white genetic inadequacy.
People be having children that they can't take care of or provide for them. That's third world for you. That's a funny way to cope. When in reality, white women are the largest demographics of people that uses fertility clinics. You guys are desperately trying to have children, and you can't. So now you result to, you guys are third world, you can't even take care of them kids. But you guys are desperately trying to have kids and you can't.
Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was an avowed racist whose goal was to reduce the black population in America, and she succeeded. In 50 years, there's been 22 million, over 22,500,000 black people aborted, strategically and on purpose. Over 1,000 black babies are aborted every day. So that means we are inside of it as we speak.
This is genocide. So wait,
we are inside of genocide.
Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, once said, colored people are like weeds, they need to be exterminated.
People don't understand that 79% of Planned Parenthood clinics are located in minority communities.
She discusses having African Americans serve other African Americans so they wouldn't be aware that they were seeking to terminate them, to exterminate them.
He could only have gotten that idea from Benjamin Netanyahu. That's it.
So I'm going to show y'all a photo. I want you to look at this photo. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of photos of people during this time who are in full garb with umbrellas, top hats, covered from neck to toe, hats, umbrellas. I want you to really look at this. Okay? I want you to think about when people with albinism go outside, how they have to cover themselves completely. And I'm not saying this is albinism. Please don't add stuff where it's not being implied, but we're going to use that as an example, maybe. How they have to cover themselves completely or apply a lot of sunscreen. They have to protect themselves from the sun, okay? I want you to think really long and hard about it, okay? Think really long. Just look at the picture. Think about it. This is the beach, y'all. And then there's this. They didn't suddenly appear. This phenotype did not suddenly appear, but it gradually appeared between 8 to 12,000 years ago. I don't want you to think about that. Also, before that, there was the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, or the Younger Dryas event, which was the last ice age. There were the earth, parts of the earth, a lot of the earth was uninhabitable for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Okay. And there are these massive underground cities that have been uncovered in Turkey and other places. Okay. I want you to think really long and hard about this. Okay. My mother, when she got married to my real dad, okay, they went to a mountainous area for their honeymoon, and they went toward an underground lake, okay? And the organisms in the lake had never seen the light of day, right? And they were colorless. I'm not the first one to think this, but it makes you wonder that before this period of time, right, when you look at the entirety of human history, even further back than recorded time, right? Most of the people that roamed the earth were dark-skinned, swarthy-skinned. You follow me? And what happened to the branch of humanity that ended up splitting and becoming, getting the phenotypes of the lighter skin, lighter eyes, right? I want y'all to really think about this. Where, I can't say as a whole, I can't apply a blanket statement because there are some good ones, right? But You know, they have this hate for the other. They have this apathy. They have this need to conquer and you know, this imperialism, colonization, violence. Wasn't there a time when a lot of these people in their civilizations, they didn't bathe and they would get sick and die because of it? Do y'all follow the line of the... I wonder. And of course, I'm not the first person to think this. This is like out there. I understand that. This is pure out there speculation. If you live underground for decades, a century, and you're not exposed to the sunlight, you're not going to be swarthy skinned. And then they had all these fairs across the world, right? In America, these fairs where they showed these cities that looked like Greek and Roman architecture as far as the eyes can see, that were built in a year or two, and the buildings were disposable, temporary buildings, right? Yeah, okay. And they re-educated human beings, right, on how to raise kids, how to take care of babies, in the United States, the metric system, the branches, how the government ran, how money worked. You got a certificate at the end of this fair, and only the uppity people could afford to go. World's fairs. And they did not make money. They lost money. And then you had the orphan trains, and you had the foundling hospitals, and you had the orphanages, and you had all these orphans, and you had these infantoriums, and you had these weird ass postcards with babies and cabbages and babies and growing from Gordons. Then you had the cabbage. That is a fucking rabbit hole. Okay. That is a fucking rabbit hole and a half, and it is out there. So if you go down that rabbit hole, be prepared if you haven't yet. I'm just saying. Makes a whole lot of goddamn sense. I don't know, y'all. I don't know. I'm just saying.
I'm a conspiracy theorist, but you don't have to be one to find this weird. Do you know what Cabbage Patch dolls are? They were marketed as a fantasy, babies grown in a field complete with their own birth certificate, like you were adopting your own child. But what if these dolls were based on a real event that we didn't learn about in history class? In the 1800s and the early 1900s, we saw hundreds of thousands of orphan children being sent out on trains and even shipped through the mail. Where did all of these children come from? Were they the children of parents who were thrown into insane asylums because there was a surge of these as well during that same time frame? Or is it something deeper that's been quietly buried over time? I know this sounds crazy, but when you start looking at the artwork from this era, the symbolism, even mention of children in fields, something feels off. Here's where it gets really weird. There's a passage in the book of Jasher that describes children sprouting forth from the earth like grass. Coincidence? Maybe. It talks about the ancient Israelites when they were in Egypt, and it says they left their children upon the field and returned home. Elohim ordered his earth to receive them, which the earth opened up its mouth and vomited them forth, and they sprouted forth from the city like the herb of the earth and the grass of the forest. The ancient Egyptians tried plowing the field, but they were unable to hurt the infants. It does make you wonder why certain ideas show up through time and then get reshaped into something harmless like a children's toy. Of course, we are told the absolute truth about our history. I'm sure there is nothing significant that has ever been simplified, reframed, or forgotten, or turned into a children's toy. But I don't know. Let me know what you think.
My grandma used to lecture me for hours. And I used to hate that shit. But she used to call me to the kitchen. She used to sit in the kitchen in the house coat, sitting on a bar stool, drinking coffee, smoking Benson Hedges and menthols, back to back to back to back to back, and would sit there and talk to me for hours. And it didn't took me until I was old to realize she was dropping gems. one of those gems she dropped was Cabbage Patch Babies. The whole time I'm thinking she was talking about Cabbage Patch Kids, the little dolls that came out in the 70s and was real popular in the 80s. That's what I was thinking she was talking about back then. But she was talking about something more diabolical than a motherfucking doll. My grandma was born in 1934 in Lower Georgia. And her mother, she was the only child, but her mother was, which is my great-grandmother, was a maid for the affluent white folks. This was back in the 40s. So my grandma used to say, my mama used to nurse children that did not belong to the family she worked for, or did not belong to the mother. Kids was popping up in the 1940s and 50s in white suburban homes where the mother was infertile, and they was calling them Cabbage Patch Babies. They were clones.
Infant incubators with living infants. So do they have like exhibits of non-living infants? It's odd that that's such a catchline in so many of his adverts here. And again, look just how they were dressed and stuff, just like carnival barkers, not actual like doctors, nurses. Baby incubator exhibit, an exhibit of intense heart interest, the most highly educational feature on the pay streak. Leading children's physicians, highly trained nurses, every modern surgical appliance and medical appliance constantly at hand. Hygienic day nursery for children, rest and assurance for tired mothers. Oh, and by the way, the baby incubators in the very hygienic day area by the nurses and the fake doctor, they're going to be charged 25 cents a head to be gawked at. That sounds like a very hygienic and sterile area. And I mean, you can see this is up till the 1940s. Just look at how they're dressed. This is Coney Island. Baby incubators with living babies. Once seen, never forgotten. I mean, that's just such a weird statement right there. Once seen, never forgotten. What was so special about seeing a premature baby all the way up until the 1940s? Well, if you had a major reset, if you had such a loss of population, and children were a hot commodity. Like, for whatever reason, there was very little amount of children, but at the same time, they had the most amount of child labor at this period. If you remember, we did that on kind of one of my first episodes. In the mid-1800s, we had like 2 million children in the labor force, and they were doing dangerous labor like mines and coal mines, textile mills. It's very, very odd, but at the same time, babies and children are such a like rarity that you can have carnival exhibits on them. Again, at the same time, they're having these Zoo of People exhibits. Here's some of the nurses and everything just standing out at the interior, showing the incubator babies and nurses. All of this just seems very dark, soulless to me. Very, very dark and soulless. The Buffalo Orphan Asylum. Never before in our 82 years of work have we so much needed your help. The war makes children. That's just a little excerpt from the Orphan Asylum in Buffalo. There's another one. You can see the Mason symbol being flashed by this gentleman. So he had a bunch of a team of highly skilled physicians and nurses, but he himself was a fake doctor. Make that make sense. This is one room in the infant incubators building in the incubator ward where infants are first placed when sent here. They are taken at the proper time. Look, they even have like little guardrails for the lines here. Taken from this ward to the nursery. There are 11 incubators in the ward, and 2 or even 3 infants may be placed in each incubator if desired. So they have 11 incubators in this ward, but they had such an amount of premature babies that they could pile them up 3 at a time in these incubators. Very, very dark and odd.
Have you guys ever looked into the official story of the Cabbage Patch Kids? The official story goes that these children were actually born of cabbages. They were grown, adopted, and sent all over across the world. But now there's a guy coming forward and claiming that this is not just a story. He is claiming that children were actually lab grown, dispersed throughout Europe and beyond, and that he himself is a clone, and that 80% of the population are clones themselves. But y'all, we already knew this, but it feels good to have them saying it themselves. Listen to this.
So from the theory of there's so many clones coming into Europe, right? That would mean there's even potentially clones in this room right now. There must be so many
80% of the Caucasian population.
80, okay, cool. 80% of the Caucasian population are clones. So, it's not about racism. So also,
no, it's nothing to do with race.
Is there any science? Is there any science that you could have a clone in your life, that you're in love with a clone? Like, I know a lot of people say that they don't think, they don't have internal dialogue. Is there anything you've come across?
That's exactly what I was about to say. So Dolores Cannon did the work on this. So Benjamin Franklin also wrote about this, saying that there was a dire need to fill America with Caucasian people. So for whatever reason, they decided to do that. Yeah, they say that there is no inner dialogue, and they called it whitewashing. But Dolores Cannon believed that 80% of the population that look like me can't trace their family tree back past really the 1800s with any accuracy, and we refer to them today as NPCs.
Wow.
She said they were soulless. I don't think anything living is soulless. I think we all have a connection. But it was called whitewashing, for want of a better expression. And it was to make out, and they did this at the World's Fairs and Expositions, they would have on display people from indigenous tribes, and they would bring children from Africa, put them on display, and they were labelled as primitive and savage.
Wow.
And this was specifically to dumb down and remove history, and this is connected to the Moors from Africa, who built some of the most beautiful architecture in the world. They wanted everyone to consider them as primitive, and Tartaria was removed for a similar reason. So we would consider Moscow, Russia, to be behind, a little bit backward, and that was another part of it. So that's what happened. And what I'd suggest people do is watch the second film that Alice Guy produced, which is on YouTube. It's called Midwife to the Upper Classes, and you'll see an example there of where the middle class couple come to buy a baby.
They told us the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair was just a 6-month party with ice cream cones and Ferris wheels. But what if those massive palaces weren't built for the fair at all? Picture this. Over 1,500 breathtaking buildings covering 1,200 acres. Domes, columns, and architecture so advanced it looked like it belonged to an empire, not something slapped together in a couple years out of plaster and straw. Official story? Temporary exhibits for the Louisiana Purchase celebration. They tore almost all of it down right after. But look closer. Those structures were gigantic, flawless, with technology and beauty that rivaled ancient wonders. Why build something so perfect just to destroy it? Whispers in hidden history circles say these weren't new builds. They were leftover ruins of Tartaria that lost advanced civilization wiped from the maps. The fair was the perfect cover showcase, the old world's glory to the public. Then, destroy the evidence and rewrite the timeline. Why hide it? Because if people knew what humanity was truly capable of before the reset, everything changes. What do you think they don't want us to remember?
Yo, family, let's revisit the World Fair of Chilaga, or what they renamed to as Chicago. Now, these photos are allegedly for educational entertainment purposes only, taken somewhere between the time of May 31st through August 30th of 1893. Now, in 2025, you don't see any buildings that are being built like this. Nothing close to it. Look how beautiful Chilaga was. Now, they're saying that they took this photo 22 months before they quote unquote built that city, which we know they didn't build the city. This was after they destroyed the so-called World Fair, which we know was ancient civilization, in divine honors to the Atlanteans. Some call it Tartaria, mostly because Tartaria was the last civilization that knew how to operate those free energy buildings. And they made sure that they destroyed it. So what you're seeing here is the destruction and a photo shoot of them eventually making it seem like they were building stuff. So wherever they destroyed it, they started to put up cranes and scaffolding to make it appear that they built it within 2 years and destroy it within a matter of days. Now, if you still believe that, then I don't know what to tell you. So in 11 months, they want you to believe that they built all of this. But in modern day, with this so-called advanced technology that they claim to have, they can't even fix a damn pothole in the road that's been there for 6 months. They ain't got enough money for it, right? And then they want you to believe that all these statues, this beautiful artwork, was made out of cheap materials. Nah. This was an ancient civilization that had free energy buildings and didn't charge people to live on Earth. They want to hide this from you for educational entertainment purposes only. Come on, family. When are y'all gonna wake up? Divine honors to all the ancestors. Peace and love.
I'm going to take y'all through the entire thought process, and you can make up your mind what you believe on this. Again, I am a free thinker. I encourage free thinking. These pieces of puzzle or these pieces of information, they fit together, okay? And that's how I organize my information. It doesn't mean it's a belief system. It doesn't mean that, you know what I'm saying, it's true. However, I'm all for opening up them brain folds and expanding them, okay? We think outside the box on this bitch. For those of you, because I'm getting new people every day, and I just want to make that clear, right? I hardly ever make blanket statements about humans or human behavior, because blanket statements never apply to humans and human behavior, okay? Also, I classify my information in different groups, right? This is out there. This is speculation. This is at the very bottom. This is just pieces of information that I've collected that I have no definitive proof for, but the pieces are similar, so we're gonna put them together and see what we get, and I'll let you be the judge of what you want to believe and what you don't want to believe, and you can throw out what you want to throw out. Again, this is info dump, okay? Info dump. So we're gonna start with European beauty standards, and it's a lot, and I'm gonna have to do this in 2 parts because I made notes. It's a lot. Pale skin was historically most popular in pre-industrial class stratified societies, notably in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome, approximately 3000 BC to 476 AD. Pale skin was associated with wealth and elite status and divinity. In Rome, women often used toxic lead-based white powder to obtain the look. The Middle Ages, 5th through 15th centuries. This period was marked by an obsession with a macabre pallor, which signaled moral purity, social rank, and political authority. The Renaissance, which was the 14th through the 16th centuries. The ideal was snow white skin with faint blue veins, often achieved using harmful white lead and mercury concoctions. Y'all, they were poisoning themselves to be white, titanium white. The Elizabethan era, which was the 16th through the 17th centuries, Queen Elizabeth popularized the mask of youth. And we all know, when it comes to the mask of youth, black don't crack. Leading women to paint their faces, necks, and chests white. The Victorian era, which was the 19th century, pale skin was still the height of beauty until the early 20th century, representing delicate femininity and high status, often protected by parasols and hats. Look at that. I don't think that's why they were really doing it, but anyways. So the Book of Enoch, that's what we're moving to next. If you have not read the Book of Enoch, you might want to. We're not Christians here. If you are, welcome. I support people's freedom to religion, but I don't support religious colonization. Okay, just to get that clear. In 1 Enoch, chapter 106, which is sometimes called the fragment of the Book of Noah, the text depicts the infant Noah with an extraordinary appearance, featuring hair as white as wool and skin as white as snow and red as a rose. I'm going to post a picture of the albinism that I was talking about yesterday, because I think we had some confusion or some bean soup theory going on yesterday in the comments. I'm not sure. This is I don't know if there's several. I need to go look it up. I don't know if there's several types of albinism, but every time I've ever heard somebody refer to albinism, this is what I see in my head. And these people will burn the fuck up in the sun. It is dangerous for them to go in the sun without protection. Okay, so I don't know where all the confusion came from yesterday, but anyways, these are the people that have the purple, pinkish, bluish eyes that most of them do this constantly, and they are fucking snow white. They're titanium white. All right, so anyways, they tried to say Noah was white as snow, and the passage shows Lamech, Noah's father, expressing deep concern because he's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm the father, and suspicion that the child was actually fathered by an angel rather than himself. Due to his unusual bright and angelic look, they thought he was an angel's baby. They thought he was a Nephilim, causing him to seek out Methuselah, his father. He's like, Daddy, this baby don't look like mine. Anyway, scholarly analysis interprets this depiction as albinism. When it comes to Noah, there are historical figures, right, that do have some historical documentation that they existed. There's Ziusudra and Utnapishtim. He was the king, the last king before the Great Flood or the Great Deluge. His city was Shurpak in Iraq. Go down that rabbit hole. I actually have a video somewhere on here about that. He's also in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Utnapishtim. He's the one that Gilgamesh goes to the underworld to consult for immortality. There's a king's list with Ziusudra or Utnapishtim, also Atrahasis. So there is historical context that says that this person actually existed, right? He's got many names. He would have been the man that would have built the ark, okay? So we're talking about albinism, and we're talking about around the time of the deluge, which could have been during the time of the Younger Dryas cycle event, whatever you want to label it, okay? So we're connecting whiteness with that time. Okay. So anyways, if you don't know about the Younger Dryas, that was the flooding, the freezing, the fervent burning of acres upon acres, continents upon continents of land, because there is a Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which is the one that I subscribe to, because that would describe where the energy came to melt the Laurentide ice sheet, and that would describe why there are elliptical basins in Nevada and also in the Carolinas. If you look at a topographical map of the United States, or I guess it's LIDAR, but yeah, there's elliptical like holes, like pockmarks. So it was bad. It was bad. And if you weren't in a pocket of survival on top, you had to go subterranean. Okay. So that leads us to the Hopi Indians and the ant people, right? In Hopi mythology, the ant people are revered as the benevolent industrial beings who saved humanity twice from worldwide cataclysms, one from fire and one from ice. Kind of reminds me of that book that talks about the Targaryens, Fire and Ice. If you are a history buff, you're definitely going to know about alternative history. Anyways. They guided them into subterranean shelters. These protectors taught survival, agriculture, and food storage. One of the places associated with this legend is the Grand Canyon. Do y'all know that the public doesn't have access to parts of the Grand Canyon? And some people say it's because there's Egyptian architecture or Egyptian stuff down there. Also, I read that there was some Buddhist shit down there because in 400 AD, around that time, 499, 450, 60-ish AD, we had an Asian explorer with a bunch of other men come here. They called it Fusei. And they described the island of women, like the Amazonians, which was probably Queen Califia and her tribe of women, her empire of women. They described the agave plant, and they described the tree of life, which I think could have been Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Anyways, so Columbus who? So yeah, the Hopi Indians talk about going underground, right? And I did an AI prompt, and no, don't come after me. I don't use AI hardly ever, but I really want to read what it said to y'all. I'll probably have to make a separate video for that. But remember, there's all these underground cities. There's especially the big one in Turkey, and there's all these underground cave systems in America. All right?
Underground cities of Turkey. They look like ant farms on an enormous scale that are dug out under the earth. And archaeology does not have a good explanation about what they're there for.
What experts discovered inside Derinkuyi's buried city has stunned historians and archaeologists alike. Far more advanced than anyone imagined, this underground labyrinth spans 18 levels, capable of housing tens of thousands of people. From massive rotating stone doors and sophisticated ventilation systems to hidden wells, storage chambers, and signs of underground agriculture, every aspect of the city reveals a civilization that mastered survival, defense, and engineering, centuries before such knowledge was thought possible. The complexity and foresight of its construction raise questions that challenge our understanding of ancient societies. Nobody believed it. Could there be secrets still hidden deep beneath the surface, waiting to rewrite history? The basement that led to a world below. An anonymous local in Derinkuyu made a discovery that would rewrite history. While renovating his home, he noticed that his chickens kept vanishing through a small crack that had opened in the wall. Curious, he widened the gap and uncovered a hidden passage descending into darkness. What began as a simple household repair soon revealed a vast underground network, an entrance to one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites ever found. The opening revealed a descending staircase carved directly into the soft volcanic rock. The stairwell spiraled downward in a tight coil, extending beyond the reach of sight and suggesting a vast underground network. The air inside was cool and damp, with a faint metallic odor, indicating long-term enclosure. Initial inspection of the walls revealed smooth, carefully carved surfaces, punctuated by niches and alcoves. Some of these spaces still contained artifacts, pottery shards, rusted tools, and fragments of textiles remarkably preserved over centuries. These early findings indicated that the space had been actively used, not simply abandoned. When authorities and archaeologists arrived, it became apparent that the farmer had uncovered an extensive subterranean city. Excavations revealed a multi-level complex spanning up to 18 stories, capable of sheltering approximately 20,000 people. The site included stables with low ceilings, chapels with stone benches, storage chambers containing preserved grains, and a network of ventilation shafts engineered to supply air to the deepest levels. Each discovery prompted new questions about the city's origin, construction, and purpose. Who designed such a complex system, and how was it maintained? And perhaps most intriguingly, how had it remained hidden from history for centuries, undetected beneath the surface of Derinkuyu? What was this city really built for, and how did its architects achieve such unprecedented complexity centuries ago? Secrets carved in stone. Once archaeologists and engineers began to explore, the scope of Derinkuyu's ingenuity became undeniable. It was not a haphazard cave system. Every corridor, every chamber, every door had been meticulously planned. Massive circular stone doors, each weighing several tons, rotated smoothly on carved grooves so precisely that a single person could move them. These doors weren't merely functional, they were defensive. When closed, they could seal off entire sections of the city, protecting inhabitants from invaders or sudden collapse. Experts marveled at the precision. The stones aligned perfectly, leaving no gaps for air, light, or sound. Ventilation shafts were everywhere, some disguised as innocuous wells or vertical tunnels. More than 50 of these shafts wove through the city like lungs, allowing natural airflow to circulate between chambers and corridors. The system was so carefully distributed that even if one passage were blocked during an attack, others would continue to provide oxygen. At the heart of this design was a protected central well, ensuring a continuous supply of both clean water and fresh air. A human mind had conceived a city that essentially breathed on its own. Water was no less carefully managed. Wells connected to reservoirs buried beneath the city provided a constant supply, isolated from contamination. Some chambers even contained rudimentary filtration systems, simple yet astonishingly effective. Archaeologists now believe that the earliest construction of Derinkuyu may have been planned around these two essential elements, air and water, the lifelines of an entire underground civilization. Experts whispered among themselves in awe. The architects of Derinkuyu had a knowledge of engineering that far exceeded anything else from the region or...
So what's the secret knowledge about the Grand Canyon? What are you trying to get me fired? Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's get into it because a lot of people want to know how the Grand Canyon is connected. So the word on the street is that if you take the Grand Canyon, it will lead to Africa. You think so? Okay, so here's the gossip. Here's the juicy juice. The Grand Canyon leads to Africa, so they say, because America is actually Africa. We never left. This is the place of slavery. This is where we were because this is known as Egypt. If you look inside the Grand Canyon, there is actually a very large sphinx. They blew its head off and you can only see its body, but they blew its head off for some weird reason. It is larger than the one in the currently named Egypt, and the Mississippi is actually supposed to be the Nile. And the place that gopher wood is found, that was the wood that constructed the ark. Yes, Noah's Ark comes from Florida. So I kept telling people a while back that Pangea did not happen centuries ago, eons ago, in different eras of time, that the Pangea was actually intact before the flood. That's why they say the gopher wood comes from Florida, because we were Africa. And when the springs shot up from the ground and fell from the firmament, that's what shifted the tectonic plates and moved the continents. Now, I'm just trying to tell you what the word on the street is. There's also numerous amounts of mounds and temples. So they used to worship on the mounds. You'll find them in North America, also down in Mexico. There's lots of temples in Mexico, okay? pyramids, temples, than you'll find anywhere in the world, even on the continent of Africa. So this is why they say the road to the Grand Canyon leads to Africa. Now, I'm just telling you. So when I'll have to make a part 2 because I'll just keep going on and on. I don't want this to be too long, but we'll get into the Israelites and how they traveled and them crossing actually the Nile. Stay
Los Lunas, New Mexico, they found a temple there, a collapsed temple, and on one of the stones was inscribed in the granite the 10 Commandments, which were written in an extinct Hebraic language that went back 2500 BC. You have the Davenport calendar, which was uncovered in Davenport, Iowa, which celebrates the ceremony of Osiris. And what is it? 1580 BC. And they describe everything that was there. It's in 3 different languages. An extinct Egyptian language, an extinct Iberian language, and I'm not sure what the third one is. And of course, they said it was a fraud, but it isn't a fraud. If you look at the calendar and the position of the stars, it is exactly dead on to that specific time that this thing was meant to be there. So there's a lot of history of America that has been whitewashed. Somewhere in southern Illinois, there is a tomb that has inscribed on it burial place of Alexander the Great. And it was in the current language of the time. And there's a whole story about that, which you can research if you want. But Alexander the Great knew all about North America. He had maps of both coastlines. Okay? 700-800 years before Columbus ever got on a boat. So you have copper, tools, emeralds, tools, ornaments, jewelry that were found buried in the Middle East. The DNA of that copper came from a copper mine that is now in the state of Indiana. It wasn't known as Indiana then, but they were pulling copper out of it thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. 10 that they have found not only in the British Isles, but again in the Middle East and in Northern Europe that came from mines in South America thousands and thousands of years ago. The history we were taught about our world is bollocks. It's rubbish. They haven't told us shit. Getting back to the Grand Canyon. What we're going to discover, what we're going to find out, is that when the Egyptians referred to the Valley of the Kings, they were talking about the Grand Canyon, which is why you had all the monuments, and you still have the monuments in the areas no one's allowed to hike into. Yes, they have found all kinds of artifacts. Yes, they have found hieroglyphics written all over the walls and stories. They also found 300 million ounces of gold still in the ground, veins of it running through the canyon walls. That's another reason why they don't want anybody in there as well. Yeah. Grand Canyon's one of the best kept secrets. And when we take back our country here in America, one of the first things we need to do is go into the basement of the Smithsonian clean everything out, take back all the relics they stole, and start our own museums. Because they have destroyed a lot of things about our history that did not fit the narrative, their narrative. These people cared nothing for the history of humanity. They have cared nothing.
This is why Tesla has to go. Why? Because not what Tesla is saying about electricity. It's the fact that he's saying this should be free for everybody, everywhere.
Yeah, he wanted to have aerial electricity free for everybody like radio waves.
And the day that you say that,
that's a wrap.
It's cheaper to keep her because we make $200 billion a day.
Yeah.
And we all agree universally you should pay for this, and we'll be in charge of selling it to you.
And we'll shut it off if you fuck around.
Because nobody cares about the guy that's trying to help other people in real life. So they were not really fans of Nikola Tesla while he was here because of, you know, the fact that he was honest. He didn't say he came up with his ideas. He said he went to Egypt and got the information, and he said that he studied that in the Sumerians and came up with it, and he wanted to just give free energy to the world. And as soon as they knock him off now, everybody can make billions of dollars off of energy, and everybody can have an electric company, and, you know. So this road is a dangerous and hazardous road, but it has all the benefits as well.
There was a reset in the 1600s. Let's examine it. All across the realm, we see evidence of infrastructure covered in dirt, ash, and pulverized buildings. There are melted structures throughout the realm, but this is just the surface. Much of what we call mountains are actually melted metropolises, and much of what we call caves are actually components of those metropolises. There are underground cities throughout the realm, but were they always underground? These are extremely elaborate. When you see a so-called mountain, this is what you're actually seeing: a labyrinth of networks beneath the surface. Pyramid in Bosnia, which is bigger than the biggest one in Egypt, also has an underground labyrinth. Look. The longest so-called cave system is in America, though. Look at the subtropolis of Kansas City. This is from the so-called construction of the New York subway. You can see those bricks are way older. This is an excavation project, not a construction project. The Cheyenne Mountain Complex wasn't built, it was discovered. Similar to the Iowa State Capitol in all its glory back there, while they make these rudimentary retaining walls for it that do not match it at all. It also has a tunnel system beneath it that was excavated and reinforced. The metallic library points to a worldwide grid. Look at Notre Dame, a city beneath the city. Even down under in Melbourne. Pompeii is one of the best and most common examples of a city that was buried and then excavated. However, there is a conflict in the timeline because the screws and the tools found don't match the time period. Look. Pompeii was supposedly buried in 79 AD, but metal screws weren't available until the 15th century. The timeline does not add up. Supposedly, the Three Graces painting was found in Pompeii, but didn't exist until the 1500s. It's the same thing with the Vatican. It was supposedly built in the 1600s, but the mosaic beneath St. Peter's Basilica is much older. And they supposedly didn't even find St. Peter until the 1960s, if you believe that. The whole story and the timeline that we are given is a lie. This worldwide event happened much more recently. A chunk of Jamaica sunk in 1692. Around that same time, American Scots had a colony in Panama that basically vanished. This is the same event that turned North Africa into a desert, buried a lot of the pyramids, buried the Hippodrome, and turned parts of Bulgaria into a desert. Look. Melted building. These comets were regarded as omens for the events that came to pass. Many claim the comet of 1680 was the same comet that came by during the time of Noah and signaled the flood. And with every reset, you get reset wars. Look. So the question is, these places that are now called catacombs, are these places where people tried to hide the resets, or were they lured there? Or are these just trophies from reset wars? Only suffering seems to be associated with the depictions of the catacombs. Look at this, Roma Subterranea. What are they doing to these people? It doesn't look amicable, and a weird way to supposedly honor monks. North and East Africa began to be inhabited by man after the 1100s. That's why there isn't much of a subterranean infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa, though there is a little tunnel network under Kilimanjaro. We do see melted buildings in Ethiopia.
Ethiopia, though these frescoes are trash and were not made by the builders. Bantu didn't arrive until the 14 or 1500s from Asia. The Khoisan were the original inhabitants of China, and they were ran into Africa in the 1100s. Their ancestors built all these pyramids. History has been inverted, and many times only children survive these resets and reset wars, forced to restart and repopulate from scratch. Kind of like the Kang gang.
It's been a while since I've had a video get that much attention, but those of you that have not had that happen before, you will quickly realize how many human beings are pieces of shit. With that being said, I am well aware of all the historical narratives of why people did shit. I absolutely love history, and a thought experiment, which is what the title of the video was, is to reimagine things, is to open up the mind, expand the brain folds, and to look at things from a different angle, to process things from a different line of thinking or thought process. That is a thought experiment. There have been many worldwide cataclysms. The Hopi Indians talk about 3 that have happened so far. They claim that we're living in the 4th world and that we're due for another shaking up cataclysm, right? There are a lot of fringe theorists that talk about global cataclysms, double cataclysms that are cyclical, right? And there are a lot of symbols that people used in ancient times that I think, in my honest opinion, it's an opinion, okay, that were symbols of these cataclysms or the signs before these cataclysms. One of them, or 2 of them, one of them's a hate symbol, and one of them is the spiral. And I know that y'all remember when those spirals in the sky were going viral on this app, those weird looking spirals, okay? If you go and you look at the Chinese records that they recorded the comet activity for thousands of years, right? They have a lot of those symbols in their documentation. So there's also Apophis, the asteroid Apophis, that will be coming 19,600 miles within Earth's atmosphere in 2029. And then again, 7 years later, it'll be passing close to Earth again. You know, NASA and the scientific community don't think that it's going to make impact with the Earth, but there's a lot of people that still do. There's also a 1992 documentary that says it was about King Arthur and Prince Madoc coming to America because, again, a comet fragment struck Britain, Scotland, Ireland, somewhere in that area, and they had to flee. And so you have the theory of the Welsh Indians in America and the existence of Prince Madoc and King Arthur over here, I think in Kansas. And there was also either Mississippi or Alabama, a plaque that talked about Prince Madoc coming. That is a rabbit hole to go down. But basically, whenever these cataclysms happen, and if they are cyclical, if you weren't in a pocket of survival, you had to go underground, whether that be via underground city that was made for that event, or a cave system, which we have a shit ton of cave systems in this country. If you listen to the 411 podcast, you'll know that. You'll know about the cave systems. There are also underground tunnels under a lot of major cities in this country, okay? We don't talk about them a lot, but they exist. If human beings had to go and live in a cave system or an underground city for generations, of course, after some period of time, they would start to develop lighter phenotypes, lighter hair, lighter skin, lighter eyes. If you look at organisms that live in cave systems and never seen the light of day, they are colorless, albino. Again, this is a thought experiment. I'm not saying this is a belief of mine. I'm not even saying I have definitive proof of this shit. I'm saying we're looking at it from a different perspective. I understand the historical narratives, okay? I understand them completely. I know why white skin was fashionable back then. I know why. I know why women wore clothing that was from their neck to their toes in the Victorian age. I know why. Okay? Noah from the Book of Enoch was born with those lighter phenotypes. I think Noah is an allegory or a metaphor for the group of people or the population at the time that had to take underground in the ark and survive a global cataclysm. There's a possibility that if, in the event this is true, that this probably happened multiple times during multiple time periods, or the people that went underground, not everybody came up, and there were multiple incursions of people coming up, and there was also the need to probably breed with people with darker phenotypes to allow for people to live comfortably on the outside. Okay. Also, there are a lot of different things that kind of, like in the media, in the movies, and also too in old books like Plato's Cave, for example. I know Plato's Cave is an allegory for some shit. I understand that, but also think about it. It's a cave. Also, The Descent. For some reason, Wrong Turn is giving the I'm moving from scarcity mindset. Also, The Hills Have Eyes, and there's probably a few that I'm not bringing up. So again, if these people lived underground or in, cave systems, underground cities, right, they would be, after generations, moving from a scarcity mindset. If you've ever seen an animal that was raised in an environment where it doesn't have enough to eat since it was young, that animal's going to have food aggression. We're talking about humans. Humans are more diverse, complex than animals, right? They have more complex mental processes, right? So what about a group of humans who are moving from a mindset of scarcity when they come out into the world and they are greeted with other? They're still, even though they have enough, they're still going to move from a scarcity mindset. Okay. The no bathing thing, right? Which was very common in the Middle Ages. So a lot of people got sick. If you're living in a cave system or an underground city, water is not going to be readily available like it is on the surface. So it would have been rationed. A lot of things would have been rationed. And we're talking about large groups of people. So even if you have a good source of water, right, you're still going to have to make sure that shit lasts. And also, too, if we had some kind of cataclysm like that today, right, a double cataclysm, which is fire and ice, if everything burned with fervent heat before it froze up or flooded, right, what in today's civilization would survive that? To let people that came after us know that we were very advanced as a civilization. Would our architecture survive? Thousands of years. Would our documentation, our books survive? Would our technology survive? Would these phones survive? How much of that would survive? Not much. You might have pockets of survival where you get anachronistic findings in the records and digging like we do today. But a lot of that shit would not survive. Even our architecture, because we don't build things out of stone really anymore. Yes, we have brick. Brick does melt at a certain point. It vitrifies. You have the melted temples all over the world. You have vitrified brick. There are certain types of stone that can survive fervent heat. That is the shit that survives. So a lot of the stuff from our civilization would not survive. Thousands, if not hundreds of years during those events. The World's Fairs were not like the fairs today. They happened at the turn of the century all the way up to, or as early as the 1700s. Okay, they were strange. They had human zoos where they would put people that were not white. They would put them against a backdrop of the environment that they inhabited, and they were teaching bias and prejudice to these people at these human zoos. They had all kinds of like expositions of new technology. They had a curriculum. It was a booklet, a pamphlet where they taught you how to take care of children, where they taught you how to measure shit, tell time, the branches of government, how money worked. It was like a curriculum of how to be a human in today's world, or the world back then, right? They were built in 1 or 2 years, whole cities that looked like Greek or Roman architecture, and they did not make money, and they tore them down right afterwards. And only the uppity white people could afford to get in. They're still happening, but not like this. There's a lot of things coming up. Like if you go look at the Toss-Tapler project, where they're digging up old cities that are thousands of years old, that question or put to question the historical narrative that we have now about human history and how far back does advanced civilization go, right? And when I'm saying advanced civilization, I mean people that were organized and had, megalithic architecture like in Egypt, Rome, things like that, right? It's questioning the narrative that we've always been taught that civilization is a few thousand years old when it could be older. And also I firmly believe, or I fully believe, that before this time period, right, like right after the Younger Dryas event, because I've been saying it wrong, because I'm from Louisiana, goddammit, and I don't watch Graham Hancock, that right after that event, when we did have the restoring of civilization, right, and we have the whole Anunnaki narrative, and the Anunnaki, some of the reliefs do look very similar to the ant people, when they gave humanity wisdom, knowledge, and how to, live on the earth and survive, right? I think that's when the patriarchy started, and I think what came before was a matriarchal system, a matriarchal civilization that perhaps was worldwide. And for thousands of years after that, for thousands of years into history, a lot of the wars and G-sides and, you name it, were to erase the pockets of survival of the matriarchal civilization, or the matrilineal civilization that came before.
Deity by the name of Sophia. Sophia is a feminine goddess who the Gnostics believed began as an energetic field emerging from the center of the galaxy. This particular energy field carried within it all the vibrational qualities necessary for the manifestation of embodied consciousness. It was said that Sophia was of a certain quality of energy that serves the All. The All, with all capital letters, is the original primary unity. And the All with lowercase letters is the creation of the universe, in which everything comes out as separate parts. It's the same relationship of one as unity and one as units. As units, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on into infinity. This is the infinity of the unit, and this is the absolute, undefiled, undivided integrity of the totality. Sophia serves the All by reflecting back to it the beauty of its own creation. This is counter to the Greek and Judeo-Christian beliefs that mankind is made in the image of God. Through the Sophian myth, mankind is made as the mirror of God. This seemingly subtle difference between the mirror and the reflected image within the mirror is philosophically rather significant. Sophia is conceptually reminiscent of the beautiful wisdom of the Puranas. Whether we know it or not, all things come into existence through that which precedes it. The wisdom of Sophia infers that the whole creation of the All would not have a manifest existence unless it was reflected. Sophia makes the great sacrifice of being a universal field of energy, and she descends into the cosmos to begin a transformation into the Earth. We are not talking about the Earth as a particular sphere in a particular place in the spiraling galaxy, but rather the place process that allows consciousness to become manifest as form. The purpose that the Gnostics give to our existence, our origins, is that we must perceive and conceive with great accuracy the nature and profound characteristics of the All. Sophia began her transformation in Gnostic mythology. As the story goes, Sophia has within her the ability to create life, which she does with such profusion and force that life and life forms literally pour out of her. The elders, who govern all the forces that come from the center of this galaxy, saw that Sophia was in crisis. So they sent a force which could bring order and limitation and a permanent basis for the organization of her outpouring. This form came as a spiral, such as we see when we look at the seed pattern in a sunflower or in a pine cone. These patterns are arranged in a very precise order. You see it in every seed spiral of a sunflower or a rose or a lotus. They have 14 circles. That order, as we will see later, repeats over and over and over again in the relationships of the golden mean. That force that they sent to rescue Sophia, bringing in this process of formal organization, is called the Christos. This is the source myth of the name of Christ, the epithet that was acquired by Christianity. At the same time, a movement of Christianity set out to proclaim Gnosticism as a heresy, worthy of death.
If I haven't made it abundantly clear in everything I talk about, matriarchy, matrifocal societies, matrilineal societies, let me say it really clearly. These were not a blip. They were not the exception. They were not a footnote in history. They were the default state of human civilization for roughly 95% of our history. Patriarchy is the experiment. Patriarchy is the deviation. It's only been in full force for, the last 3,000 years. But before that, it was goddess worship. It was female-centered culture. And archaeologists, anthropologists largely agree it was a relatively peaceful time. So what happened? Men figured out paternity. For the vast majority of human history, the connection between sex and conception wasn't understood. Life came from women. That's what they saw. That was observable. That was undeniable. And the culture reflected that. But at some point, men put two and two together and realized they had a role in conception. And rather than meet that knowledge with partnership, they weaponized it. They built an entire civilization designed to center themselves, not just here on Earth, but in the sky. And they replaced the goddess with a god and replaced the mother with the father. And they did it through brute force and violence. The Roman Empire is the clearest turning point of this. If you're a woman who romanticizes Rome, I want you to sit with that for a second, because Rome is the machine that systematically dismantled the last remnants of matriarchy and goddess culture across the ancient worlds. Rome didn't preserve civilization. It destroyed one. No wonder men are obsessed with it, right? So patriarchy is 3,000 years old. That's it. The world before it lasted hundreds of thousands of years. We are not living in the natural order. We are living in a very recent, very violent override of it. So we know that patriarchy is not natural, but how did it get here? How was it installed into our society? The shift from goddess-centered matriarchal societies to the patriarchal world we inherited and live in now didn't happen organically. It didn't happen because men were naturally dominant or because women were naturally submissive. It happened because of invasion. Repeated, sustained, violent invasion over thousands of years. Let me tell you about the northern invaders. Around 2300 BC, and in waves going back even further, possibly to 4000 BC, groups of nomadic peoples from what we would today call Russia and the Caucasus region and northern European forest and coastal zones began migrating south and west. These are the people scholars refer to as Indo-Europeans, Indo-Iranians, Indo-Aryans, or just Aryans. They were known in the archaeological record as the battle axe cultures, and the scholars who studied them agree on one thing, even if they disagree on everything else, that these cultures were dominantly pastoral, patriarchal, warlike, and expansive. They weren't temple builders, they weren't creators of urban centers. They were nomadic hunters and shepherds who were just beginning to practice agriculture. What they were good at was conquest, and one of the most significant weapons they had was the horse-drawn war chariot, a technology that really revolutionized warfare and gave them a power advantage over the settled, peaceful, goddess-worshipping civilizations they encountered. Now here's the most important part. These invaders didn't just bring weapons, they brought a worldview, and that worldview had two pillars. Number one, that men are superior to women, and number two, light-skinned people are superior to dark-skinned people. Scholars who have studied this note that their sense of superiority seems to have been rooted primarily on their ability to conquer, not in any cultural development, because the people they were invading were more culturally developed. The goddess-worshipping societies of the Near East and the Middle East had thriving urban centers and art and spiritual traditions and written records. The northern invaders had axes and horses. But conquest doesn't require a culture. It just requires force. They swept into Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, into Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, into Canaan, modern-day Palestine, into the Iranian plateau, into the Indus Valley, into old Europe. Everywhere they went, the same pattern. Aggressive warriors accompanied by a priestly caste of high standing who initially invaded, conquered, and then ruled the indigenous population. And with that ruling came a theological takeover. The goddess was dethroned, the male deity rose. The mythological record from every one of these regions shows the same story. Light conquering dark, male conquering female, the sky god overthrowing the earth mother. As scholar Sheila Collins writes, theology is ultimately political. And this wasn't a fast process. These invasions happened in waves over 1,000 to 3,000 years. The goddess didn't disappear overnight. Matriarchal culture didn't collapse in a single generation. It was slow, sustained erasure, layer by layer, region by region, myth by myth. But it was deliberate, and it was done by force. And so when we talk about patriarchy, when we ask, where did this come from? Why did it exist? Why does it feel so embedded? This is part of the answer. It was installed by a specific group of people with a specific worldview, using specific tools of violence and theological replacement. And that is the truth of the violent origin story of the world that we are still living in. There is nothing natural about it. What if the secrets to the universe were embarrassingly obvious and we just kept looking right past them? This is something I think a lot about. If the universe is reasonable and logical and generative and generous, and most people, scientists included, probably believe that it is reasonable and logical, then wouldn't it make sense that the world immediately around us would reflect how the greater universe operates? Like the material world we live in would be indicative of something much greater and much larger, as above, so below. That's actually a principle out of Hermeticism philosophy, the idea that patterns repeat across scales. That's what happens, that what happens at the cosmic scale mirrors what happens at the human level and vice versa. Most people hear that and think it sounds really, I don't know, I guess mystical, but I think it's also just logical and common sense. So here's my question. If an alien civilization landed on Earth and said, tell us what you believe about creation, about origin, about where things come from, and we told them it's an all-knowing man who created everything, and then they looked around and noticed that everything every single living human being came out of a female body, what do you think they would say? I think that they would be baffled, genuinely confused, not because they have a more complicated answer, but because it's so obvious. Everything that has ever lived on this planet requires a womb. It came from a female, not sometimes, not mostly, always. That is not a myth or a story. That is not just kind of a cultural thing that we talk about. It's a biological fact operating without a single exception. And we looked at that and we built cosmologies that said something else is the source of creation. I think about this a lot. I feel like we've duped ourselves. If you want to understand creation, study the female body and its cyclical and regenerative properties. Instead, it feels like we've been on a 2,000-year wild goose chase with a culture that centers men, when the truth is right in our faces if we could just put patriarchy down long enough to see it. I need you to sit with something just for a second. We seem to, as humans, to have built a cosmological framework, entire theories about how the universe was created, and not one of them ever seriously considered the female body as a template. And this has confused me for decades. Not one. How could it be possible that we looked around, we saw women creating life and didn't think, oh, that might be a good place to start to understand the universe? And I need you to understand how insane I think that is, because if you are trying to understand creation and you live on a planet where half the population carries the literal biological architecture of creation inside their bodies and you don't look there, that feels less like an oversight and more like an intentional decision. The Big Bang Theory says the universe began with a violent explosion. That's a very patriarchal and masculine way to describe it. And it's got a lot of critics. It says something came from nothing, a singular, forceful event. I think that we were just looking in the wrong direction from the start. The female body has been sitting here in plain sight the whole time, doing miraculous things, gestating, birthing, nurturing human beings. Why in the world did we never think to apply that to our understanding of the cosmos? Think about parthenogenesis, the ability of a female organism to produce life from within herself without anything external. It happens to this day in insects and fish and reptiles, in sharks and the Komodo dragon. This is the biological baseline of life, female self-sufficiency. The male contribution, although important to humans, is just an addition to it. It's not the origin. And then the egg. The human egg is very complex. It carries mitochondrial DNA. It's the only genetic material passed completely intact from mother to child across every generation all the way back. The egg is information dense and it is life sustaining. So when you look at something like the electric universe cosmology, plasma cosmology, the framework they use is better. It's more female. It's built around relationship and fields and connection. They think of the universe as something that births structure. It helps structure to unfold rather than just, pow, exploding into it. And that feels just much more truthful to me. It also maps onto something we know about women's bodies. We know that the universe as a field is a field that generates from within, not something coming from external. It's a birthing process. So as above, so below is not a metaphor. It is a principle that we should be using to research, to study, to curate knowledge on this earth that is then transferable and reflected in the universe. If you want to understand how the cosmos creates, you look at how creation works here in humans, in the kind of laboratory that is right in front of you. And patriarchy spent thousands of years making sure you didn't look there. Look, this is not some sort of conspiracy theory. It's really just common sense. It's just what happens. This is just what happens when men build the frameworks of knowledge and they don't include women as a model for the exact thing that they're trying to explain. We are cosmologically behind because we refuse to look at the female body as the source of truth. And I think when we correct that, when we see the female body as primordial, really correct it, embrace it, embody it, then the whole picture will change.
The first modern human beings that evolved on this earth were black women. They evolved in sub-Saharan Africa about 280,000 years ago. And every human being on the face of the earth today has the memory of those black women's genetic structure in their genes. Now, we don't want to admit that, but that's the way it is. If we start teaching the truth about history, if we start teaching about Nile Valley contributions to civilization, it will totally change the way we conduct ourselves. Columbus didn't discover America. You can't discover a place where people are already living, but we celebrate that every October. It's a lie. We need to stop telling the myths and start telling the truth. You have a right to be what you are, and until people in this country and people in this world get it into their heads that the first modern human beings that evolved on this earth were black women.
The most diverse, even Neil deGrasse Tyson said, most genetically diverse continent, because you can have all the traits come from Africa, which is facts because it's a woman. Everybody comes from a woman.
Correct.
You know, the black woman has that mitochondrial gene.
That's right.
The Eve gene.
Eve gene
that creates every
from
race.
East Africa specifically.
That's why a lot of black women are missing.
You know
Are
what?
facts. Like, they're missing because they're okay. Well, Henrietta Lack just got their family's finally suing because all of cancer cell research was taken from this black woman in 1955. They took her unbeknownst to her. They just stole her cells, and then that's what all cancer cell research is from this black woman that they did not tell.
Yeah.
So now the family's finally suing and getting
Good for them.
finally. But we were experimented on all the time.
All of the time.
This all connect. All this stuff is connected.
Yeah.
All this stuff connects.
Yeah.
So,
But I really love that, diversity that we have in the continent.
It's amazing.
From, language to clothes,
dances
to, food.
I don't think the story of Henrietta Lack is talked about like that, man. The black woman whose cells regenerated like X-Men. Yeah, she went to the hospital because she was in pain. And when they took tests of her blood and her cells, they literally regenerated by itself. Big Pharma, the hospital, made millions of dollars off this lady's cells, bro. And the crazy part is they didn't give her family anything. This black woman's cells was used for so much research: the polio vaccine, cancer research, herpes research, HIV research. The hospital used her cells for like every test you could think of to advance Big Pharma, to advance the pharmaceutical companies. So when you go to the hospital and you think you really getting healed, yes, they might got something to calm down what you're going through, but come with hella side effects. But they're really trying to see if you the next Henrietta Lack. When you give them your blood, when you give them your cells, they literally take your blood and go to their research lab and see how they can advance their stuff with your blood in your cells. Because one of the most important things they don't tell us melanated people what our skin actually does. Our skin actually mutates to be able to survive in harsh environments. That's what melanin does. That's why you can see a lot of melanated people thriving in harsh environments. That's why we were able to survive slavery. Because our skin, this is billions of years old. It learned over time how to adapt to its environments. But they will never tell you that, because they want us to believe that we need them, when all we need is sun, a natural, healthy diet, natural spring water, fruit juice, and our cells will naturally heal itself. But if they have you believing that you need them, you will always be sick. And you will always be putting money in their pockets. And then they make movies about it like it's some random superpower that extraterrestrial got. No, Henrietta Lack had the same thing Wolverine had. And a lot of other melanated black people have the same thing. We just unhealthy, so our body can't do what it needs to do if it's unhealthy. And the crazy thing is, her cells were also used for space experiments, bro. And radiation experiments. How advanced is this melanin for real when we activate it and actually heal our bodies, and it actually is being able to use at its fullest potential? What could this really do? What is this that they're using for computer chips, that they're using to advance their technologies? What is this? I don't know. Y'all boy let me know.